Okay, good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's webinar with Dallas McMillan from Influential. What we're going to be talking about tonight is how to build that valuable brand. Dallas has already taken us through about the importance of building the brand. So what we're going to get into tonight is some of the nitty-gritty stuff about how to build that valuable brand, how to build that valuable brand architecture, and how to position yourself as a leader in your industry with that powerful brand message. Apologies for the bit of a late start this evening, but we just had a few technology difficulties. I had a chat with Tracy Sheen this afternoon, and she and I both agreed that IT was the bane of our existence. So over to you, Dallas. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Bronwyn, and thanks everyone for coming along. Now, we have had some tech difficulties transitioning over from GoToWebinar to Webinar Jam, so we'll be recording this. If anyone's missed it, you'll be able to tune into the recording. And yeah, tonight is one of my favourite parts of this program. This is about how we actually structure our brand and our messages, and just the way we think about our brand internally, so that we can maximise the value that we can communicate and deliver to our customers. Now, this will be a fairly compact lecture. We'll be reviewing some of the earlier stuff because this really is bringing in together some of the ideas we've covered already, and then to actually tying it into how we create our brand messages. And in the next couple of webinars, we'll then use these to start creating marketing messages that we can put into things like social media or blog posts or other communications like pitches or sales conversations. And then finally, we'll look at how to build out our online presence, incorporating these messages in a structured way. So just returning to our website now, this is the Digital Brand Blueprint website, and we've got if you've been tuning into these, the initial module to the course is an introductory digital brand fundamentals. This just introduces the basics of what a brand is and what we'll be going through in the course in terms of designing and developing our brand from the ground up, because a really common misconception among people who are starting a business or wanting to launch a new product or anything where they're starting to think about branding is that branding is your logo or your color scheme or a tagline, but really your brand is everything that your customer experiences about your business or your brand or your product. And it's great if you can plan that out and present it in a structured way rather than leaving it to accident or miscommunication is so often the case. So a couple of weeks ago, we covered this concept of a beachhead, a business beachhead, and that's how when you're starting a new business, it's really valuable to look for the ideal clients that you can start working with that will both give you some quick wins, get you some good customer feedback and some early revenue, but also allow you to grow and expand into other markets. So from that, we identified who our ideal customer was and what problems they had, what challenges they had, and what they were trying to get done. And we're going to be returning to that in today's session to focus more on how we actually communicate to our customers, how we can help them. In the second module of the course, which was last week's webinar, we talked about the relationship roadmap and how we actually build the relationship with the customer over time and why that's so important in moving through our sales process. And tonight's webinar is about our authority architecture. And this is really where we're starting to move into the credibility component of our brand. As I'll cover shortly, whenever we're wanting to do business with someone and particularly sell them a high value product or service, they need to know, like, and trust us before they'll try and then buy our most valuable products. And so module 3 is very much about that trust. It's building that expert credibility that positions us as the go-to person to help them get their objective completed. So in this module, there are five components. The first step is really, I'll go over this in a bit more detail later, but the first step is really about identifying the single purpose of your marketing and your brand, what you're delivering to your customers. Secondly, we've got 3 core messages about how we help our customer overcome the challenges that are stopping them reaching their objective. And the third level here is what principles we work with in getting the job done, because very often people, they just want an outcome and they don't really care about all the technical stuff. As providers, we care about the technical side of things, but if we bring them into the conversation, it tends to lead our conversations into commodity conversations about, oh yeah, well, how much is that feature? I don't really want this feature. The guy down the road can do that for only so much. And we really want to avoid getting into these deeper, more technical conversations earlier on. And one of the ways we do this is by talking about the principles or the sort of the guiding milestones that we need to meet in order to successfully reach the customer's objective. And they, as professionals, as experts at what we do, we've built our business to make sure we meet those milestones. The customers generally will understand those. They don't necessarily understand the technical details or the industry acronyms and buzzwords and things that we need to know to get the job done. So we don't even want to mention those because they'll only confuse people. Instead, we want to focus on these sort of principles, which can often be deliverables of our product or service. And then the next level down is the actual steps that we go through or our customer will go through on the path toward reaching the objective. And this is the process that we apply. And then finally, the 5th level that I'll be talking about is the particulars of how we get the job done. And this is where some of the more technical things come in. It might be specific systems, tools, software, methods, technologies that we use, and this is stuff that we do day in, day out. Most business owners live on this level, and it's very easy for them to start communicating with customers about particular things that they need to do in order to get the job done. And while that can be useful at times, there's a real risk that it brings the conversation down to the level of the nuts and bolts, the commodity sort of stuff that risks the customer thinking, oh look, I could probably do this myself, or someone else could do X, Y, Z for me. Maybe I should go and see them. The customer really is never, it would take them. They would need to learn to do your job in order to really make sense of this level of communication. Instead, we want to be operating up at this 3rd level for the most part, and this is where we are communicating our expertise in a way that the client understands. The great benefit of this is that they see us as an expert, they understand the principles of what we're trying to achieve, and they'll sort of put themselves into our hands. And that's really what we want. We don't want them to tell us how to do our job. We don't want them to think they can do it themselves. We don't want them to think, oh look, now I know what you're going to do, I can buy it elsewhere. Instead, we want them to go, yes, I know, I can see how I need those things. Obviously, you know what you're talking about. I'm prepared to go with you. And in terms of our marketing, when we first meet people, we really just want to tell them the first thing that first level of what it is we do, who it's for, and what results we help them achieve. What can people be, do, or have after working with us that they couldn't before? As we get deeper into it, we can start talking about some of the details of how we get there, some of the priorities that we address, the problems that people face in getting there, or standards that we adhere to. But we don't rush to tell people about the nitty-gritty details, this sort of fifth level down here of what we do in our day-to-day business, because it's boring. No one wants to hear about the actual, the details of what you do, whereas the, often the more interesting stuff is what criteria we need to meet to make a job successful. So that's really what today's session will be about. The next webinar will be about how we then take that information and turn it into a narrative sales journey so that we can actually create sales conversations that are about our customers' experiences in a narrative format. That means a storytelling format. So we can say, I had a customer who was in a situation just like yours. They wanted to get this thing done just like you do. But like most businesses in your situation, they face these challenges to get there, and we helped them overcome these challenges, and you'll go into detail as to how you do that. And this was the result they got. So it's sort of a story, but it's following a specific modality, which we talked a bit about last week with the hero's journey sort of framework for storytelling, and we'll come back to that a bit more. And then finally, the fifth webinar is about how we actually then design and develop our online presence and our brand. And it's only at this point that we would go and see a graphic designer and say, hey, look, I know now who my ideal customer is. I know what I want my brand to look like and what I'm trying to tell them about. And then we can give them a very strong brief to design a brand and a visual brand to represent who we are once we've got very clear on it through going through this process. So this is, the course is about branding, but really the actual design and then building websites or brochures or other marketing material we do at the end after we've got very clear on who our customer is, how we help them, how we're going to connect and relate to them, how we're going to communicate our expertise and our value to them, and how we are actually going to market to them over time. And it's only once we know all those things that we'll then approach a designer or a developer and say, okay, this is what we've worked out, and then there is a creative design process at that stage. Most people rush to the end, but they haven't really thought about who their customer is or who they what they want to be communicating to them, and the result is a weak and sort of boring brand that looks just like everyone else in their industry who went to the same logo designer. So that's what we'll be covering today. I'll just change over to my PowerPoint presentation, and it'll be a little tricky changing screens, so just bear with me here. Okay, so I'm picking up on one of the earlier webinars here and really recognizing that as we move into an online marketing environment, we've shifted from being in a situation where people would do business with us because they knew us personally or because we're the business down the road or the closest one to them. People have moved from doing business with us by default because they didn't have a better option to being in a powerful position where they can Google the whole world worth of business owners, find the one who's most suited to them and who seems to meet their needs and understand them and offer them the result that they want the best, and then go to them. And what that means is that we are now competing on a global level, and our brand needs to be very clearly targeted to the kind of customers we want, or we're going to be competing with hundreds of other people in our business space who have a similar value proposition. So in light of that, we need to start building our online profile in a way that guides people through the sales process, and at each stage of the sales process, there's specific things that we want to communicate. And these, in the traditional sales language, are suspects, prospects, leads, sales leads, and customers. There's lots of different ways to explain this, but really it's saying, let's get heaps of people at the start, some the people we think will buy our product, and then we will increasingly get clear about who's going to buy and focus on them, and then market more heavily to them, contact them via our sales team, and ultimately turn them into customers. And this process works. It's a very efficient industrial sales process, and it lets us scale business and transactions. But in the online environment, people increasingly are wanting a more personal touch. They want people to recognize what they're up to, and they get turned off by being treated like a cog in a machine, or a number on a computer. So we would rather build a more customized, personalized sales process that lets us create a more personal connection, and rather than just producing revenue, produce stronger relationships with our customers. And in doing that, we're creating a social sales process where we're interacting with the customer at each stage, and as we do, they will get to know, like, and trust us. Or they will try and then ultimately buy our most valuable products and services. Now, just taking a step back here, one of the key challenges when you are coming up with marketing messages is knowing at what stage you should be saying what message to your customers, because when people don't yet know you, they have a different need for information. If you rush toward telling them all about the features of your product or service, they're just going to be turned off because they don't even know whether they need you, whether you matter to them, whether they trust you. So it really, at each stage, the information that we want to communicate to our customers varies. In the know stage, that corresponds to our the first level, which is just the one thing. When we're getting to know people, we want to be known for one single thing, and that is what we do. And that one thing has different aspects, but it's just a single focused message that, hi, I'm Dallas. I help professionals to launch an online brand, and I work with them to help them become more visible so they can attract clients, and to build their expert brand, and to deliver remarkable value to their customers. Now, at first, they just need to know what I do, but as they get to chat to me earlier, I can start talking about, what they get out of it, and that's where that extra sort of tagline of attracting clients, build an expert brand, and deliver remarkable value. So they're the three things in my brand architecture that once they get to know me and they get to like me, then I get the opportunity to communicate that. If I try to rush that at the start, though, people aren't going to remember it, because they're going to be flat out remembering one thing. We just want to be known for one thing at first. So it really, the concept of the brand architecture is that as people move through your sales process and get to know you better, they get exposed to more information about you. Once they trust you, this is when you can start to share your principles, and in a way you've got permission at that point to say, hey, this is how I actually do it. This is the really important stuff that I know that other people don't know, that my customers don't know, and a lot of my competitors don't know, because I'm an expert at the way I do it, and I've got a specific method that I've worked out that works best for people just like my ideal client. So those 5 principles can be shared at this level where they're starting to trust us, and that gives them the opportunity to go, look, that can reinforce the trust, and then gain permission to move on to the next level where they say, wow, that sounds really good. I'd like to get those things, that great outcome, and the steps along the way. How can I work with you? And once they've once they've expressed further interest, then you're really entering a situation where you're in a sales conversation, or possibly some sort of free trial or an introductory consultation, or maybe they're trying one of your preliminary products or services. So they're trying out your services, and at that point they will start to be exposed to your process. Possibly the first step in your process is an introductory consultation, or is downloading the free trial, and so they're actually in your try phase, which is that 7 steps in that pyramid. And then finally, when they're ready to buy, at that point they enter the individual actual steps that you take with a new customer. They start to get exposed to your technologies, your tools, your methods, and to learn how to learn what you actually do. Now, one of the big mistakes that we make as sellers or providers or technicians or consultants or experts of any type is to talk too much about what we actually do before we get to the buy phase. And it's tempting because the customer really wants to rush to that bit. They don't want all the stuff in between about getting ready and doing the due diligence and all the steps that make the final result work properly. They want to just quickly rush on and have the answer, thanks. But in practice that doesn't work, and if it does, you're in the wrong industry, because it's very hard to sell something like that at a high margin, because anyone can provide that product or service. It's only these more complex and demanding processes where you can create valuable, unique products and services that you can charge a premium for. So if you're able to immediately just tell people, oh, this is how I do it, I do A, and then I do B, and then I do C, and then I do D, and then they could actually just go and do it successfully, or your competitor down the road does exactly the same thing, then you have a very very weak value proposition. You have personally, not for your product, you have, because you don't really have any IP. What you do is just technology, and anyone can rip that off. So what the brand value architecture gives you is it builds your authority by having these multiple sort of steps or transitions or layers to go through in order to reach a successful outcome. And the result of a social sales process where you're communicating each step is that you produce revenue. You produce more revenue because you've got a differentiated product that can't be easily replicated. But also you build stronger relationships because your customer actually understands the value you're delivering. Most of the time, people spend the money, but they don't really know what you're doing. And as I said, we don't want them to have to understand all the little steps and all the technologies and tools we use. That actually reduces our value because it looks like anyone can do it. In practice, there's a lot of skill that goes into you doing your job well, and that's better encapsulated by the sort of middle levels of the authority architecture, which are about your principles and your process. That's really where people, they understand it well enough to see the value and well enough to realize, gee, this is more complex than I thought. Okay, and I'm going to switch back to my other screen now, so just bear with me. Any questions or anything, Bronwyn?
No, there's none in the chat box at the moment, Dallas.
Great.
So continue on.
Okay, I've just made an infinite spiraling Bronwyn, so I'll see if I can correct that.
Fabulous as I may be, I don't think you need an infinite number of me.
It would be exciting, that, wouldn't it? Okay, so really our in delivering this message to our customers, we want to map out each step and then know what stage to deliver that specific message. So part of the concept with the brand value architecture and this sort of pyramid shape is that early on we want very simple, clear, focused messages. So we start off with one thing. The numbers really are representative, and they shouldn't be taken as absolutely essential, but these are sort of a really great guideline because you definitely want one to be known for one thing, not 2, 3, 5, etc. Because that really does let you get the strongest message across. At the next level, when we're talking about the problems or the challenges or the your specialties, there's different ways to represent this. But 3 really is the magic number in marketing. It's very easy to use in both visual representation on brochures and things like that, but also in language. It's very easy to say A, B, and C versus A, B, C, and D. Just the way we remember things, 3 really is a great number to work with. So bear that in mind. And similarly, in marketing, things like my 5-step process or my 7-step process, it tends to be the odd numbers are more memorable and convert at a higher rate. So that's just an empirical observation, and as a result, most people stick to using these odd numbers. But if your method is 5 things, that's great. If it's 6, and it really should be 6, don't feel it's got to be 5. It really is a matter of adjusting it for the market, and for your product. Don't feel obliged to stick to these numbers, but it is useful to just keep in mind that at first we've just got one thing we want to communicate, and the one thing is really the product. Each of the other levels delivers the one thing. They're all about the one thing that you do, but it's different way. It's at first it's the essence of the one thing, and then it's sort of how you do it, and then what you actually do to get there. As we get more detailed, there will tend to be more individual steps. If I become your customer, there might be 20 or 50 different interactions before I get my result, and they all need to be represented. So it's really designed that your marketing is to be simple to the customer. As they move further into your sales process and into buying your product, they get exposed to more complex aspects of your business, but because they've been educated in advance, they understand that that they're able to deal with that extra information as they go. So that brings us to the end of what I wanted to cover for tonight. As I mentioned, this is a pretty compact webinar, and we'll be recapping some of this and taking it further forward in the next webinar, where we're talking about the narrative sales journey, and how we're actually going to use these messages to create sales conversations and other marketing material which we can share with customers. Bronwyn, anything that you wanted me to cover before we wrap up tonight?
No, I haven't got any questions in the chat box at the moment, Dallas, but I'll just have to say that I'm really looking forward to the next webinar with the narrative sales journey. I know that many people find the sales conversation to be a really difficult part of their tasks and their job as a business owner. So I'm really looking forward to exploring with you how to make that easier with a narrative sales journey.
Yeah, for sure. And one of the things I really like about this, and this is not something I invented, it's a really well-established process that's used a lot, particularly in sort of high-level B2B sales, where they're very expensive products or contracts or deals that they're negotiating. And one of the things I really like about it is that you can be talking about your customer and talking about their needs, not about your business. And that's so it moves you away from selling and into into education first, which is sort of about the benefits and why you need to do it. But then it goes another level, and it gets into this sort of storytelling, which is about people and the challenges they face and their relationships and their journey, and that's actually much more appealing to customers to listen to, much more relaxing. Their critical brain switches off more, which is really important because it's actually the emotional and narrative part of your brain that makes the buying decisions. We tend to think we buy rationally, and that's an illusion. In fact, we buy based on what we want, not on what we need. So, storytelling and this sort of narrative sales approach can be great for that, and particularly because it lets you talk about your customer, not talk about yourself.
Great. I'm really looking forward to that. Hopefully I can glean some information that I can share with my clients.
Terrific. Well, thanks again, Bronwyn. And thanks for everyone who's joined in live tonight, despite the technical glitches, and also people watching the recording, and look forward to seeing you next week.
Okay, thanks, Dallas. Good night.
Bye.